Have you ever wondered if something you do every single day, something that feels completely normal, might actually be damaging the most intimate part of your body without you realizing it? I ask, because after decades of listening to men in my clinic, I've seen the same quiet pattern repeat itself over and over again. Problems don't start with a sudden failure. They start with tiny habits that chip away at a man's confidence long before he notices anything is wrong. And what's most shocking is that many of these habits look harmless on the surface. They don't hurt. They don't feel dangerous. They simply blend into your routine until one morning you wake up and something isn't working the way it used to. That's often the moment men begin to panic, but in truth, the warning signs usually show up much earlier. And that's exactly why I want to talk to you today. Because if you're over 50 or even approaching it, your body is already sending you signals, subtle changes in blood flow sensitivity or morning function that deserve your attention long before they turn into something bigger. And here's the hopeful part. Once you understand what's really happening beneath the surface, you can start reversing the damage far more easily than most men ever realize. So let me take you inside the real stories and real lessons I've learned from the men I've treated and show you the everyday mistakes that quietly harm your performance, mistakes you can fix starting today. The first mistake I see over and over again in my clinic is something almost every man thinks is harmless, and that's wearing tight underwear all day long. And I know it sounds simple, almost too simple to matter, but let me tell you what I've learned from years of examining real cases. The male reproductive system is not designed to live in a cramped, overheated environment. In fact, several studies show that even a small increase in temperature around the testicles, just 1 or 2 degrees, can lower testosterone production and affect sperm quality. The problem is tight underwear traps heat the same way. Keeping your phone under a pillow makes it overheat. You don't feel the damage immediately, but the internal system feels it long before you do. When men sit, walk, or move throughout the day in fabric that compresses blood vessels, the circulation to the penis, and the surrounding tissues becomes restricted, like stepping on a garden hose and expecting water to flow normally. I've had patients come to me frustrated, telling me they don't understand why their firmness feels weaker, why their energy feels lower, or why mornings don't look the way they used to. And when I simply ask what kind of underwear they wear, many of them suddenly go quiet because they already know the answer. But here's the part most men never hear. The body is designed to keep this region cooler than the rest of the core. Cooler temperatures support hormone balance, nerve sensitivity, and long-term erectile function. When the area is constantly overheated day after day, the signals that support a healthy erection begin to dull. Not because something is wrong with you, but because your body is trying to function in an environment it wasn't built for. The good news is that this is one of the easiest things to fix. Switching to breathable fabrics like cotton, choosing looser fits, and even letting your body rest at night without restrictive clothing can make a dramatic difference. I've seen men regain sensitivity, improve blood flow, and experience stronger morning function within just a few weeks of changing this one habit. It's simple, but it's powerful. And if something this small can quietly affect performance, you might be surprised by the next mistake because it happens not on your skin, but deep inside your daily routine. And most men never even realize they're doing it. What I'm about to share next is one of the fastest ways men unknowingly weaken their pelvic nerves without feeling a single warning sign. What makes the next mistake even more concerning is that it doesn't come from what you wear. It comes from how you live. After years of talking with my patients, I've realized that one of the quietest threats to a man's sexual health is something he does every day without thinking, sitting for hours without moving. And the reason it's so dangerous is because it feels completely normal. No pain, no warning signs, just routine. But underneath that routine, your pelvic nerves and blood vessels are slowly absorbing the pressure. Think about it this way. When you sit in one position for too long, especially with your hips tightened and your spine collapsed forward, you create the same effect as bending a wire back and forth. It doesn't break immediately. It weakens quietly, silently, one tiny bend at a time. The pelvis works the same way. The longer a man stays seated at a desk in a car or even relaxing on the couch, the more compressed those blood vessels become. Research from the American Journal of Epidemiology shows that extended sitting dramatically reduces circulation to the lower body, and when the blood flow slows down, the tissues responsible for firmness and sensitivity start receiving less oxygen than they need. I can't tell you how many men have walked into my office saying the same thing. I don't understand why things feel weaker, or I haven't changed anything, but something is off. And each time when I ask them to walk me through their daily routine, they suddenly realize just how many hours they spend in a chair. Some of them tell me they sit from morning until lunch, then again from lunch until evening, moving only when absolutely necessary. And the truth is, the body simply wasn't designed for that. Your pelvic floor, the group of muscles that support erections, control blood flow, and maintain sensitivity, needs movement the way your heart needs air. When circulation is restricted for too long, those muscles become stiff, the nerves become less responsive, and the signals that control arousal start to weaken. It's not age, it's not just how things go. It's the byproduct of modern life slowly reshaping the way your body functions. But here is the part that gives men so much hope. The solution is shockingly simple. You don't need a gym membership. You don't need intense routines. You just need movement, small intentional breaks throughout the day. Standing up every hour, stretching your hips, rolling your shoulders back, or taking a 2-minute walk can reignite circulation through the pelvis faster than most men realize. I've watched patients regain strength and sensitivity simply because they stopped treating their chair like a second home. And if sitting can silently weaken the very foundation of a man's performance, the next mistake reaches even deeper because it reveals the earliest warning sign most men ignore until it's nearly gone. What I'm about to explain next is something your body tries to tell you long before any real problem shows up, and yet most men brush it off without realizing how important it is. What makes the next mistake even more important is that it doesn't come from what you wear or how long you sit. It comes from one of the clearest signals your body tries to send you every single morning. And I can't tell you how many men overlook it, minimize it, or avoid thinking about it because they don't want to face what it might mean. I'm talking about morning erections, a natural biological check-in that reveals far more than most men realize. Over the years, as I've talked with patients in their 50s, 60s, and even 70s, I've noticed a pattern. The moment I ask, "How often do you wake up with a morning erection?" the room gets quiet. Some men look down, some hesitate, some try to give vague answers. Not because they're embarrassed about the topic itself, but because they already sensed something was changing and they were hoping it wasn't important. But it is. In fact, research from the International Journal of Impotence Research shows that the frequency of morning erections is one of the strongest indicators of overall sexual function, vascular health, and testosterone balance. Morning erections aren't random. They're not just about desire. They are a sign that blood flow, nerve communication, and hormonal rhythms are working in sync while you sleep. When that morning signal starts fading, becoming inconsistent, or disappearing altogether, it's rarely just age. In my experience, it's usually one of the earliest red flags. Circulation is slowing, stress hormones are rising, or sleep quality is breaking down, and the body is quietly trying to warn you before bigger issues surface. I've had patients tell me that losing morning erections felt like a small change, something easy to ignore, something they assumed would come back on its own. But ignoring it is like ignoring the check engine light in your car. The problem doesn't vanish. It simply grows in silence. And the sooner you pay attention to that signal, the faster and easier it is to reverse the trend. Because here's the encouraging part: the body responds quickly when you support it. Improving sleep, reducing alcohol intake, managing stress, and boosting daily movement can restore morning function far faster than most men expect. These small shifts help realign your hormonal cycles and restore the natural nighttime blood flow that protects long-term erectile health. And I've seen it firsthand. Many men who once feared they were declining realized they were simply out of balance, and within weeks of simple lifestyle changes, that morning signal began to return. But if ignoring morning erections is one of the earliest warning signs, then the next mistake takes us into a very different territory, because it affects not just the body, but the brain. And for many men, it becomes a habit, so deeply rooted that they don't even realize how dramatically it's reshaping their ability to feel real intimacy. What I'm about to share next is something countless men rely on without knowing it's slowly rewiring their pleasure pathways in ways they never intended. And if losing morning erections is the body's early whisper for help, the next mistake is more like a slow rewiring of the brain that men rarely notice until it has already taken hold. Over the years, as I've listened to patient after patient describe their struggles, I've realized how common this next habit truly is: relying too heavily on porn, especially the fast, high stimulation kind that modern platforms are filled with. What many men don't realize is that the brain adapts to whatever you feed it. When visual stimulation becomes the main source of release, quick, intense, endless novelty with just a swipe or a click, the brain starts recalibrating its expectations. I've had men sit in front of me genuinely confused, telling me they feel disconnected during intimacy, or that real touch seems too slow, too quiet, too less than what they're used to online. And every time I hear it, I'm reminded of how powerful dopamine really is. Numerous studies, including research published in JAMA Network, show that repeated exposure to rapid-fire visual content increases the brain's threshold for arousal. It's like turning up the volume on your headphones a little more each day. Eventually, normal sound feels flat. The same thing happens with dopamine. The more novelty the brain receives, the more novelty it begins to demand. And when a real partner doesn't come with jump cuts, dramatic lighting, or instant intensity, the brain hesitates. Not because the man doesn't care, not because he's broken, but because his nervous system has adapted to a pace no human connection can match. I've seen men struggle with this silently for years. Some tell me they feel ashamed. Others tell me they thought something was wrong with them physically. But very often the issue is neurological, not structural. The good news, something I always remind them, is that the brain is incredibly flexible. Neuroplasticity works both ways. Just as the brain adapts to overstimulation, it can just as easily recalibrate to real, slower, more natural forms of intimacy. And that recalibration doesn't require dramatic steps. Sometimes it starts with taking short breaks from visual content, even just a few days. Sometimes it starts with focusing on breath sensation or simple touch without pressure or performance. I've watched men regain sensitivity control and presence far more quickly than they expected simply because they gave their nervous system space to reset. But if porn quietly alters the brain over time, the next mistake affects the body in a different way. Right after release, when most men think they should do absolutely nothing. And yet, what happens in those few minutes can either support long-term health or silently create more tension than they realize. The next thing I'm about to share tends to surprise almost every man I've treated because it happens after the moment they think everything is already over. And if overstimulation can quietly reshape the brain, the next mistake reveals something just as important, but this time it shows up in the body moments after release when most men assume the experience is completely finished. Over the years, I've noticed a surprising pattern among my patients. Many of them don't realize how critical those first few minutes after climax actually are. They roll over, grab their phone, stay curled in one position, or fall asleep instantly without giving their body a chance to reset. And what they don't realize is that this habit creates a tension that builds silently over time. Here's what I've seen again and again during release. The pelvic floor muscles contract rapidly, almost like a series of small rhythmic pulses. It's a natural reflex, but the moment the experience ends, those muscles don't automatically relax. They often stay partially tightened, almost locked in a shortened position. And when a man stays still afterward, especially curled forward, the tension lingers instead of releasing. I've had patients describe a dull heaviness, a subtle ache, or a sense of pressure they couldn't explain. Some didn't feel anything at all, but their performance slowly declined in the weeks and months that followed. From a scientific standpoint, it makes perfect sense. Research on pelvic floor dynamics shows that post-release relaxation is essential for restoring proper blood flow and nerve responsiveness. When those muscles remain contracted for too long, circulation becomes sluggish, inflammation sticks around, and sensitivity gradually drops. It's similar to finishing an intense workout and immediately sitting down. You trap all the tension inside instead of letting your muscles cool down naturally. And this is where so many men unintentionally sabotage their next experience. They assume recovery is automatic, that the pelvic floor resets by itself, that nothing more is required. But the truth is, the body depends on movement to flush fresh blood through the pelvis. Simple actions like taking a few slow breaths, stretching your legs, or standing and walking for even 30 seconds can dramatically improve recovery. I've watched men regain comfort, speed up healing, and even improve their next performance just by adding a tiny bit of movement afterward. It doesn't have to be dramatic. It doesn't need to look like a routine. It just needs to give the body a chance to unwind. The difference between staying frozen in place and giving yourself a minute to move is far greater than most men expect. And once they try it, many of them tell me they're shocked at how much lighter, calmer, and more responsive their body feels afterward. But if post-release tension affects the body in ways men don't notice, the next mistake hits even harder because it doesn't just impact hormones or nerves. It directly targets the blood vessels that control a man's ability to stay firm in the first place. And the surprising part, most men think this next habit is just a little, when in reality, it's far more powerful than they imagine. What I'm about to share next is one of the biggest reasons men over 50 lose firmness without ever connecting the dots back to their daily choices. And if tension right after release can silently weaken the pelvic floor, The next mistake goes even deeper because it doesn't just affect muscles or nerves. It affects the lifeline of a man's performance, his blood vessels. What surprises me most is that so many men brush this off with the same sentence. It's just one drink. It's just one cigarette. It's no big deal. But after years of treating men in their 50s, 60s, and beyond, I can tell you that these small things often become the quiet thread that unravels their sexual health without them ever realizing it. Here's what most men don't know. Alcohol, even in moderate amounts, temporarily lowers testosterone and dulls the ability of the nervous system to respond. I've had patients tell me they enjoy a drink to relax, but what they don't realize is that alcohol slows down the very signals needed for arousal. And when the body is even slightly dehydrated, a common effect of alcohol blood flow to the penis becomes less efficient. It's like trying to pump water through a dry hose. Everything works, but not the way it should. And then there's smoking, even the "I only do it when I'm stressed" kind. Nicotine constricts blood vessels instantly, not gradually, not subtly, instantly. I've seen men who swear they don't smoke enough for it to matter, but their blood tests and vascular scans tell a completely different story. Reduced nitric oxide, stiffer arteries, slower circulation. These are the exact factors that make it harder to stay firm, and they often show up long before a man notices anything changing. Research published in the Journal of Sexual Medicine confirms this. Even occasional smoking can weaken endothelial function, the system responsible for opening blood vessels during arousal. And when that system becomes sluggish, erections become harder to maintain, not because of age, not because of stress, but because the pipes simply aren't opening the way they used to. What I want men to understand is that this isn't about perfection. It's about awareness. I've seen patients make remarkable improvements just by reducing their intake instead of eliminating it entirely. Cutting back by even 30-40%, choosing alcohol-free nights, switching to non-nicotine calming techniques, or simply hydrating more can create changes so noticeable that they often come back to me saying, "I didn't realize how much better I could feel." Your blood vessels are surprisingly resilient. When you give them even a little relief, they respond quickly. Many men regain firmness, improve stamina, and feel more energized within weeks, not because they added something new, but because they removed what was quietly working against them. But if alcohol and smoking can slowly weaken the circulation, the next mistake hits even harder, not physically, but emotionally, because it's the one men struggle with in silence, thinking they have to face everything alone, even when the solution could be one honest conversation away. And what I'm about to talk about next is the very reason so many men suffer far longer than they need to, simply because they're afraid to speak up. And if alcohol and smoking can quietly weaken a man's circulation, the next mistake strikes on an entirely different level. It's not physical, it's emotional. And it's the reason so many men suffer far longer than they ever needed to. Over the decades I've worked with male patients, I've seen this mistake more than any other, the habit of staying silent about sexual health. What still surprises me, even after all these years, is how deeply men hold their worries inside. I've had patients who walked into my office with the weight of years in their eyes. Some of them had been struggling for months, others for years. And when I gently ask, "Why didn't you come sooner?" the answer is almost always the same: "I didn't want anyone to know. I thought it was just aging. I didn't think it was serious. I was embarrassed," but silence doesn't protect them. It isolates them. It traps them inside their own assumptions, many of which aren't even true. I've seen men convince themselves there's no hope, when in reality, their issue could have been fixed with something as simple as improving sleep balancing hormones, making a small medication change, or adjusting daily habits. I've watched men fear the worst serious illness, permanent damage, irreversible decline, only to discover that the cause was completely treatable. But because no one ever taught them how to talk about these things, they carried the burden alone day after day until it became heavier than it needed to be. And here's something I wish more men understood. As doctors, we don't judge, we don't shame, we don't walk into the room with opinions already formed. We walk in to listen, to understand, to find answers. In fact, I often tell my patients that sexual changes aren't signs of weakness, they're signs of communication. Your body is speaking to you, and the earlier you speak up in return, the easier it is to restore what you've lost. I've seen men walk into my office feeling defeated and walk out with relief on their faces because for the first time, someone explained what was happening in a way that made sense. And nothing brings me more clarity than seeing the shift that happens when a man realizes he is not broken, he is simply uninformed. And now he finally knows what to do next. But if silence keeps men stuck longer than they should be, the next mistake reveals an entirely different trap, one that promises quick fixes, but slowly steals control away, leaving men more dependent than before. And what I'm about to explain next is why so many men end up relying on pills that were never meant to be the long-term solution. And if staying silent keeps so many men stuck in their struggles longer than necessary, the next mistake traps them in a completely different way because it gives the illusion of a solution while quietly pulling them further from real recovery. Over the years, I've seen countless men walk into my office with the same story. They tried a pill, it worked for a while, then they increased the dose, and eventually it didn't work the way it used to. And each time they tell me this, I can hear the frustration in their voice as if their body betrayed them. But the truth is far more complicated and far more fixable. What most men don't realize is that these pills were never designed to fix the root cause. They don't rebuild damaged blood vessels. They don't reduce inflammation. They don't correct hormonal imbalances or repair the impact of stress, poor sleep, smoking, or long hours of sitting. All they do is temporarily open the blood vessels, like forcing a rusty door to swing open for a moment. It works, but only if the hinges underneath are still functioning. And when the foundation is weak, the effect becomes unpredictable. I've had patients tell me they rely on pills because they don't have time to fix their lifestyle or because they believe their body is too far gone. But every time we run tests, the real reasons become clear: low nitric oxide, stiff arteries, chronic inflammation, poor sleep quality, or blood sugar fluctuations that disrupt hormone signaling. These are problems no pill can override forever. And when men use medication without addressing the underlying issues, the results fade, sometimes gradually, sometimes dramatically. Research from the American Urological Association shows that men who combine medication with lifestyle improvements experience significantly better long-term outcomes than men who rely on medication alone. I've seen this with my own patients, too. The men who sleep better, hydrate consistently, walk daily, manage stress, and reduce alcohol often respond to lower doses, and many eventually don't need medication at all. Not because the pill changed, but because their body did. And that's what I wish more men understood. Pills can be incredibly helpful, even life-changing, when used correctly. But they were never meant to replace healthy habits. They were meant to work alongside them. When a man strengthens his circulation, supports his hormones, and reduces inflammation, the occasional pill becomes a powerful tool, not a crutch. When he doesn't, the pill becomes weaker and weaker, leaving him feeling defeated and confused. But if relying on pills can slowly pull a man away from real improvement, the next mistake strikes somewhere even more hidden, deep in the muscles that support erections, control blood flow, and anchor the entire lower body. In the surprising part, most men don't even know these muscles exist. What I'm about to share next is one of the most overlooked secrets to male performance. And yet, it has nothing to do with hormones, pills, or age. And if relying on pills can slowly take men further away from real long-term improvement, this next mistake reaches even deeper because it involves a part of the body most men don't even realize exists. In fact, whenever I bring this up during my consultations, I often see the same reaction: surprise, confusion, and then a moment of silence when everything finally clicks. I'm talking about the pelvic floor, the hidden engine of male performance that quietly supports blood flow, firmness, control, and sensitivity. Over the years, I've examined hundreds of men who thought their issue was hormonal, vascular, or purely age-related, only to discover that their pelvic floor muscles were extremely weak or chronically tight. And it makes perfect sense. These muscles sit beneath the base of the pelvis like a hammock, supporting the bladder, the bowel, and the structures involved in erections. But because men can't see these muscles, and because no one ever teaches them how important they are, they assume they don't matter. Yet, they matter more than most men ever imagine. Research published in the British Journal of Urology shows that strengthening the pelvic floor can significantly improve erectile function control and stamina, even in older men. But here's the problem. Modern life works directly against these muscles. Hours of sitting compress them. Stress causes them to tighten. A lack of movement weakens them. And over time, these muscles lose the ability to activate properly when a man needs them most. I've had patients who struggled for years only to realize that the foundation of their performance wasn't failing, it was simply untrained. The good news is that the pelvic floor responds incredibly well to simple, consistent practice, not intense workouts, not complicated routines, just small intentional exercises that reconnect the brain to these deep muscles. I often guide men through the basics, breathing into the lower abdomen, gently lifting the pelvic floor on the exhale, holding only for a moment, then fully releasing. When done correctly, it feels nothing like forcing or straining. It feels like awareness. And with that awareness comes progress. I've seen men regain control, improve firmness, and experience stronger, more stable performance simply because they learned how to activate these muscles correctly. And I've also seen what happens when men don't address the pelvic floor tension builds, sensitivity drops, and frustrations rise. But once they begin strengthening this overlooked part of their body, things often change faster than they expect. It's one of those rare habits that delivers results quietly, consistently, and profoundly. But as important as the pelvic floor is, the next mistake reaches even deeper because it isn't about muscles, hormones, or, nerves. It's about something far more powerful: belief. And this belief is the one thing that stops more men from improving than any physical issue ever could. What I'm about to share next is the most heartbreaking and the most untrue assumption men make about their intimate health. And after everything we've talked about, the circulation, the hormones, the nerves, the pelvic floor, there's one final mistake that reaches deeper than all the others combined, because this one doesn't live in the body. It lives in the mind. I've heard it from men again and again, whispered through fear, frustration, or quiet resignation. I think it's too late for me. And every time I hear those words, I feel the weight behind them. Not because the body has failed, but because the belief has. Over the years, I've seen men walk into my clinic convinced that decline is inevitable, that Age is the ultimate verdict that intimacy belongs to the younger version of themselves, that their best years are behind them. But then I run their tests, review their scans, talk through their habits, and the truth becomes painfully clear. Their body hasn't given up on them. They have given up on their body. What most men don't realize is that the male reproductive system is incredibly adaptive. Blood vessels regenerate, hormones rebalance, nerves recover, muscles strengthen. The body is constantly trying to heal, especially when you give it even the smallest chance. I've seen men in their late 50s, 60s, even 70s regain function they thought was gone forever, simply because they stopped believing decline was automatic and started making small, consistent changes. And the science backs this up. Research from the Harvard School of Public Health shows that lifestyle improvements, better sleep, improved nutrition, regular movement, reduced inflammation can significantly restore sexual function, even in older men. I've watched this unfold with my own patients. Men who once told me I'm done later walked back into my office with a spark in their eyes because they realized they weren't done at all. Their bodies simply needed attention, direction, and patience. That shift believing improvement is possible is often the turning point, because once a man stops telling himself the story of decline, he finally gives his body the chance to prove him wrong. And that is where healing begins, not in perfection, not in extreme routines, but in simple daily choices that add up in powerful ways. But here's the part that matters most. You are not late. Not in your 50s, not in your 60s, not in your 70s. I've seen too many men reclaim their confidence, their energy, their presence, and their connection by letting go of the belief that aging means surrender. It doesn't. Aging means adjusting, and adjusting is something every man is capable of. If the belief that it's too late has been holding you back, this is the moment to let it go. Your body is listening, your health is responding, and your future is still yours to shape. Because once you understand these 10 mistakes, the real question becomes, what will you choose to change starting today? After hearing these 10 habits, I hope you see something important. Your body isn't working against you, it's communicating with you. Every change in firmness, sensitivity, or morning function is your body saying, I need care, I need support, I need attention. And the truth is, you don't need perfection to turn things around. You just need awareness and the willingness to make small, consistent choices that protect your energy, your confidence, and your long-term health. I've spent years watching men rediscover strength they thought was gone. And I want you to remember this: nothing about your story is final. Your age doesn't define your potential. Your past habits don't define your future. And no matter where you are right now, improvement is always possible when you begin treating your body with the respect it's been asking for. So take these insights with you. Choose even one habit to change this week. Give your body a chance to respond and be patient with yourself. Healing doesn't shout, it whispers. If these messages resonated with you, do something for your future self. Save this video so you can come back to it anytime you need a reminder. Subscribe to the channel and tap the notification bell so you never miss new science-based guidance to protect your intimate health. And tell me in the comments which of these 10 habits surprised you the most. Your answers help me create the next videos that support you even better. Thank you for spending this time with me today. Take care of your health, take care of your confidence, and remember, your best chapter is still ahead of you. I'll see you in the next video.